Every man's story defines him. It's a blueprint that shows him where he's been and where he's headed. Stories passed down from fathers to sons, they're not just entertainment, they're survival lessons. They're the difference between standing tall or getting knocked down. The difference between walking away from a fight and being carried out. And without those stories, a boy is simply running around blind, walking into dangerous situations without the tools to handle them. Some of us are lucky. We've had fathers that gave us these lessons that made them who they are. Lessons that kept them alive, taught them how to win. But there are millions of young boys who simply didn't get that. They're left to figure it out on their own without the wisdom that should have been passed down to them. And that's why I'm writing this book, because every young man deserves to hear the stories that will shape their lives, the ones that will show them how to handle life when it hits them where it hurts, when they least expect it. Me, I was fortunate enough to grow up in a household with a strong, masculine man in my life, a self-made, successful athlete, minister, father, author, entrepreneur, and a great leader. Tell Your Sons is my opportunity to share everything that I've learned from being a man from my father, and our podcast is a chance for you to hear lessons from some of the most impactful men that I've had the opportunity to learn from. Please read, listen, and share these stories with as many boys and young men as you can. The fight for masculinity. There's a lot of talk these days about toxic masculinity. It's a term that, to be honest, I just don't really like. I don't believe that real masculinity is toxic at all. What's toxic is insecurity, low confidence, and the absence of a strong male role model who can teach young boys how to channel what makes them a male into becoming truly masculine men. Real masculinity isn't about dominating others or using strength to harm. It's about training yourself to use the tools that God gave you as a man to protect, defend, and build something positive. Right now, the world seems to be attacking masculinity. But here's the truth. Just because society is criticizing masculinity doesn't mean that we can somehow change biology and stop males from producing high levels of testosterone. That's not going to happen. Males will always have certain traits. They're going to be more aggressive. They're going to be prone to playing rough. They're going to be more active, mischievous. They're going to be prone to taking risks. These are natural tendencies which are hardwired into males for good reason. The problem isn't masculinity itself. It's what happens when we make young men feel guilty for having these traits. When we shame boys for being masculine, for having natural male energy, they're going to end up channeling those tendencies in all the wrong ways. And that's when you get toxic males. Males who act out, who harm, who destroy. And toxic males aren't just a threat to women, they're a threat to the entire world. And only a masculine man can put them in their place. The only thing that can truly change a toxic male is a masculine man. A man who understands how to use his strength for good, how to take those rough edges and sharpen them into something constructive. It's our job as masculine men to guide the next generation, to teach boys that it's okay to be aggressive, to take risks, to be adventurous. But it's about how they channel that energy. Masculinity isn't something to suppress. It's something to harness. And if we don't step up and teach that, the world is going to face a much, much bigger problem than what we think we have right now. Masculinity isn't about being macho for the sake of being macho, and it's never been about harming others. It's about having the strength to protect and the wisdom to guide. And the way we pass it on is through stories. Stories are so powerful. We must make sure that young boys hear these stories, especially the ones without fathers, because it's only stories told from masculine men that they look up to that can effectively convince a young boy that's lost of what it truly means to be a man. It's these stories that show them how to use their strength as a positive force, to be leaders, protectors, and men who uplift those around them. And these stories aren't just for nostalgia, they're survival manuals. They're meant to prepare you for the fight that's coming, because the fight's always coming. Life hits you harder than any opponent that you're ever going to face. And without the right stories, the right lessons, you're stepping into the ring unprepared. This book and podcast is written for anyone to consume, but it's specifically produced for the millions of young men out there without a father to tell them what it takes to survive, to thrive, and to win like a real man. And if they don't get these stories, they'll be lost. That's why I'm not just sharing my stories, I'm bringing in stories from other men, experts, fathers, mentors, athletes, celebrities, guys who have fought their own battles and come out on the other side with the lessons that matter. Stories that young boys need to hear right now, especially those who have not had anyone in their life to pass down this wisdom. Because the truth is, no self-help book, no college degree, no job is going to teach a young boy what the stories from a father can. Without these stories, he's handicapped. And this book and podcast is here to change that. It's here to give boys and young men the survival guides that they need, that they should have gotten from the start. Masculinity is strength with purpose. One of the most important lessons I hope to impart is that masculinity is not what the world paints it to be. It's not taboo, it's not a bad word, and it's definitely not toxic. Real masculinity is about using the strength that you've been given for something greater. It's about being articulate, it's about being self-sufficient, it's about being ambitious, and it's about being empathetic. It's about taking the tools that God gave men and using them to protect, defend, and build. If we don't pass it on, if we don't teach young boys what real masculinity looks like, we risk losing masculinity altogether. Without this guidance, boys will turn to toxic behaviors because they have no idea how to channel that energy that's inside of them. That's why this book and podcast exists, to keep the spirit of true masculinity alive. To show boys, especially the ones without fathers, what it means to be a man in the truest sense of the word. So I conclude by saying that a father's legacy isn't about the money he makes or the titles that he wins. It's about the stories that he can pass down to young men. Those stories are how a man teaches his son to fight, to stand, and to win like a man. They're how he prepares him for life. And that's what I want to do with this book. Give young men the stories that they need to survive, to win the battles that are ahead of them. When a man has the stories that he needs told to him from somebody he respects, he never has to face life alone. This book is my way of making sure that everybody, every young man, every boy, whether he had a father in his life or not, has the stories that he needs to become the man that he's meant to be.